And let me say a very, very special thank you to the amazing John Legend. You know, I love John Legend for his music, but you gotta admit, you love John Legend for his words too. He's a man who's got a lot to say. Way to go, John. I also want to say a very special thank you to Benny Starr, who's been there from the very beginning, another man of incredible music and incredible words. Thank you, Benny. So I'm Elizabeth Warren, and I'm the woman who is going to beat Donald Trump. I'm also going to be the woman who's going to be in the fight to help beat Lindsey Graham and put Mitch McConnell out of a job. Now, South Carolina, we got a lot of work to do. And to get that work done, I just want to tell all of you, I was not born a politician, but I was born a fighter. You bet. And I am ready to fight. Look, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm going to tell you about some policies because I just can't help it. I got to talk some about them because they're about how we make real the changes we can make. We've had enough of politicians coming in and they make some vague promises every 4 years and then disappear. I want to talk about the real changes we can make, the ones we can make together. And then, instead of doing a selfie line today, we're going to get music from John Legend. So, yeah. So I was born and raised in Oklahoma. I have 3 much older brothers. By the time I grew up in a family that kind of had its ups and downs financially, paycheck to paycheck families. We had better times, we had worse times. But along about the time I was in middle school, all 3 of my older brothers were gone by then. It was just my mama and my daddy and me when my daddy had a heart attack. Now, he pulled through, but he couldn't go back to work. And it meant week after week after week of no money coming in. Even to this day, I can remember on the day when we lost our family station wagon. I can remember how my mother used to tuck me into bed at night, and she'd give me a big smile, and then she'd walk out of the room, and she'd close the door, and I'd hear her start to cry, because she never wanted to cry in front of me. These are the times that I learned words like mortgage and foreclosure. And I still remember walking into their bedroom one day, and laid out on the bed was the dress. Now, some of you know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And there was my mother down in the other part of the room in her slip and her stockings. And she was walking back and forth, and she had her head down. And she was saying, "We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house." She was 50 years old. She'd never had a job outside the home, and she was terrified. Finally, she looks up and she sees me standing in that doorway. She doesn't say anything. She just looks at me, and she looks at that dress, and she looks back at me, and she walks over, picks the dress up, wrestles it on, puts on her high heel shoes, and she walks to the Sears, where she gets full-time minimum wage job answering phones. That minimum wage job saved our house, and it saved our family. And it's the first lesson my mother taught me, that no matter how scared you are, and no matter how hard it looks, you get in there and fight to take care of your family, because that's what we do. But there was a second lesson to that story that I didn't learn until years later. And that is, that same story is a story about government. And I'll tell you how. Back when my mother went to the Sears and got a minimum wage job, a minimum wage job in America would support a family of 3. It would pay a mortgage, it would cover the utilities, and it would put groceries on the table. Today, a minimum wage job will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this fight. And understand this difference. It didn't just happen because of gravity, because something happens over time to the minimum wage. No, it happened because of who government works for. When I was a girl, at least the question asked in Washington is, when we set the minimum wage, we need to know, what does it take a family of 3 to survive? What does it take for them to get a toehold in America's middle class, a chance to build something solid? Today, the question asked in Washington is, where do we set the minimum wage to maximize the profits of giant multinational corporations? Well, I don't want a government that works for giant multinational corporations. I want one that works for our families. And that is the fight I'm in. How do we make a government work for us? Think of it this way. We have a government right now. It works great. It works great for giant drug companies, just not for people trying to get a prescription filled. Am I right? Works great for people who want to make money investing in private prisons, just not for the human beings whose lives are torn apart by those places. It works great for oil companies that want to drill everywhere, just not for the rest of us who see climate change bearing down upon us. When you see a government that works great for those with money, works great for those who can hire armies of lobbyists and lawyers, and doesn't work for much of anyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, and you need to call it out for what it is. Corruption. And I got a plan for that. The good news is, it is the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. The bad news, we need the biggest anti-corruption plan since Watergate. It's got a lot of pieces to it, but I'm going to tell you just a couple real quick. End lobbying as we know it. They got enough power. Block the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. And you really want to hose out some corruption in Washington? Make everybody who runs for federal office put their tax returns online. Yeah. Because here's the thing. We fight back, and we get this government to represent the people. We push back the interests of money in this country, and we can make big structural change. And I just want to tell you about a couple of parts of this. John talked about it, but I want to talk about it for just a sec. It is time for a wealth tax in America. This is a 2-cent tax on fortunes above $50 million. So I want everyone here to relax. Your first $50 million is free and clear. If that makes you nervous, I may not be your candidate. But your first $50 million is free and clear, but your 50 millionth and first dollar, you got to pitch in 2 cents. And 2 cents on every dollar after that. You hit $1 billion, you got to pitch in a couple of cents more. Anybody in here grow up in a family that owned a home or own a home now? Anybody? You've been paying a wealth tax. It's just called a property tax. All I'm saying is, for the really richest folks, their property tax should include not just real estate, but also the stock portfolio, the diamonds, the Rembrandt, and the yacht. Now, you may have heard there's some billionaires who don't like this. Some of them go on TV and cry. So sad, right? Some of them run for president. discovering it's harder than they thought. Here's the thing, though. They say to me, you know, you shouldn't try to take our money away. You shouldn't try to tax this money. We worked hard for it. We had a good idea. We followed through. And my view is, you made $1 billion, good for you. Good for you. But here's the deal. You made $1 billion. You built that fortune here in America. You built it at least in part using workers all of us help pay to educate. Yeah. You built it at least in part getting your goods to market on roads and bridges all of us help pay to build. You built that fortune at least in part protected by police and firefighters all of us help pay the salaries for. And we're Americans, we're glad to do it. We're glad to invest in opportunity. That's who we are. But here's the thing, you make it big, you make it really big, you make it top 0.1% big, pitch in 2 cents so everybody else gets a chance to make it in this country. Because what can we do with 2 cents? Doesn't sound like much, does it? But with 2 cents, we can provide universal child care and early childhood education to every baby in this country age 0 to 5. 100% of them. Think what that means for those babies and for their mamas and for their daddies. We can provide universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country. And we can stop exploiting the people who do this work, mostly African-American women and Latinas. We can raise the wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in America. 2 cents. We can do all that for our babies, plus we can put 800 billion new federal dollars into our public schools. How about that? That would let us quadruple our funding for Title I schools. Think about that. And you'll hear this from a special education teacher. For the first time in history, we could fully fund IDEA so children with disabilities would get the full educational opportunities they deserve. 2 cents. We could do all that for our babies. We can do all that for our elementary kids. Plus, we could provide tuition-free technical school, 2-year college, 4-year college, like right here, tuition-free. Yes. We could increase the Pell Grants so people have real opportunity. And it is time to level the playing field, to acknowledge for years how much support went into universities that then locked their doors to African-American students. We could put $50 billion directly into our historically black colleges and universities. Yes. 2 cents. And just one more thing to round out that 2 cents. We can cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. Yes, you can. That's what it means to have a plan. A plan to restructure our economy. Because understand this is about our values. We can leave that 2 cents with the billionaires. They already have their fortunes. They're growing those fortunes at what? 4%, 6%, 8%, 10% a year, 2%. They can invest in an entire generation of young Americans. All we have to do is decide we're going to make it happen. Are you with me on that? I want to say one more word about how we make transformative change. There's a lot of places that we need to be doing work in healthcare, and particularly in the high rates of maternal mortality for African American mothers. Yes, you bet. In environmental justice, how we have for generations put polluting plants and toxic waste dumps in or near communities of color, destroying the health of young children and destroying property values. I've committed $1 trillion to cleaning up the mess that America has made for decades in communities of color. So much more we need to do. Close our private prisons, reform our criminal justice system, legalize marijuana. Enough of this. Yep. We got a lot we can do, but understand this. It only happens if you've got power. It only happens if we make this democracy work. Right now, we've got an America where if you're rich, you got a really loud voice in Washington. But if you're not rich, you don't get heard very much at all. So one of the core things we got to do is we got to turn that around. This is about power, about who's got it and who needs a whole lot more of it. So for me, it starts right here. I'm going to push for a constitutional amendment to guarantee the right of every American citizen to vote and to get that vote counted. Also, a federal law to end all political gerrymandering in this country. And one more federal law, a federal law to roll back every racist voter suppression law in America. And just one more. We got to overturn Citizens United. Democracy is not for sale. So here's how I see this. We have such possibility going forward. Such an America that we could build. This isn't an America of the past. That America had real problems. That is the America that elected Donald Trump. We got to build a better America than that. But right now, it's a time of fear for a lot of people in this country. I travel a lot and I hear people and they talk about, they're afraid. 3 years of Donald Trump, they're afraid for their families, afraid for their neighbors and friends, afraid for children locked in cages down at our border, and afraid for children on lockdown in our public schools. Afraid for women, afraid for people of color, afraid for LGBTQ people, all of whose rights will be up for grabs in this United States Supreme Court. They are afraid for our nation and afraid for our planet. And the danger is real. Our democracy hangs in the balance in this election. And we have a decision to make. In the face of this kind of danger, are we going to back up? Are we going to get timid? Are we going to crouch down? Or are we going to fight back? Me, I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back. I'm fighting back. Fighting back is an act of patriotism. We fought back against a king to build this nation. We fought back against the scourge of slavery to try to preserve this union. We fought back against a Great Depression to rebuild this economy. And we fought back against the rise of fascism to try to protect our democracy. Americans are at our best when we see a problem, we call it out, and we fight back. That's who we have to be. This is no time for small ideas. This is no time to nibble around the edges of what's broken. We have to be in this fight and be in this fight all the way. Understand this. Of all the people who've run for office, who are still running for office for president, who've had elective office, I've been in politics the least amount of time. I came to this as a teacher. I came to this as someone who has spent a life fighting for working families. I didn't run a campaign that was designed to, by a bunch of consultants. I didn't run a campaign that was designed not to offend big donors. I passed that stop sign a long time ago. I run a campaign from the heart because I believe that 2020 is the moment we've been called to in history. The moment in our lives when we will determine the future of this nation, the future of this earth. We are called to this moment, and I am in this fight because I believe in you. I believe in the America we can build together, an America in which every single human being has value, an America in which every child is worth investing in, an America in which, in our democracy, people are more important than money. I believe in that America. And if you can see that America and think that just maybe that America is worth fighting for, then I'm asking you, get in this fight. This Saturday, it is up to you. Get in this fight. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for you to go to ElizabethWarren.com and sign up an hour of agreeing to do some phone calls, knock on doors, talk to people ahead of you in line at the grocery store or standing next to you pumping gas. But get in this fight, because understand this moment in history will not come our way again. We will not get a second chance. This is our time to choose hope over fear, our time to choose courage over cynicism, our time to dream big, fight hard, and win.